Activist Radio is on the air. You have tuned into the Mark Harrington Show, sponsored by Created Equal. Mark is training a new generation of leaders to take on the culture of death and win.
You don't like abortion, don't have one.
The only thing that can be said to be objective truth is that there is no objective truth.
It does come out in one piece. It comes out in one piece.
I would argue that we certainly are not all created equal.
And now, here's Mark.
That's right. Your radio activist here, coming to you live from Columbus, Ohio, the studios of Created Equal here in the heart of it all here in Columbus. And we're looking forward to the launch of the 2017 Ohio State Buckeyes season, ranked number 2. But we're not going to be talking about that today. We're going to be talking about something else. Is abortion safe, legal, and rare? Do you remember the great theologian Bill Clinton? Remember him? Way back when. Bill Clinton said with that bony finger, right? Abortion needs to be safe. He goes, abortion needs to be safe, legal, and rare. Safe, legal, and rare. Remember that? Well, here's the question. Is abortion safe, legal, and rare? Well, we know for sure it's not rare. In fact, the Democrat Party dropped that a while back when they called for funding of all abortions. In fact, right now, as I talked about last week, in the state of Oregon, now illegal aliens actually get their abortions paid for by tax dollars. So they dropped the rare part. They don't want that anymore. They want abortion on demand, free abortions without apology or excuse up to 9 months of pregnancy. So it's not rare. Is it legal? Well, I guess technically it is, although it's really only decriminalized. It's certainly not moral. But the question we want to talk about today, is it safe? We have breaking news coming out of New Mexico. They're in Albuquerque, the late-term abortion capital of America, or for that matter, the world, where people come from all over the country to kill their babies in the third trimester. And unfortunately, a woman died the earlier this year, and the news came out this week about that. So we're going to be talking about that. My guest, Troy Newman, will be with us in a minute, but let me just give you a little background on what's going on here, okay? Here's the deal. This story coming out of New Mexico. This young woman, her name is Keisha Marie Atkins. Keisha Marie Atkins. She was 23 years old. By the way, folks, you have a daughter? Huh? I have a daughter. She's going to be 21. I just can't imagine the parents' grief. This 23-year-old young woman, who was apparently 6 months pregnant, went to Southwest Women's Options, just a nice name for a late-term butcher shop there in Albuquerque, to have her abortion. And the butcher, Curtis Boyd, who's an abortionist, a baby killer, a serial murderer, butchered her, and she ended up dead. She died of what they're calling blood clots to the lungs, and I'll get into the autopsy here with Troy in a minute. But this is the breaking news. Folks, see, the abortion cartel says we need to keep abortion legal so that women don't go to back alleys and resort to all these other types of ways of killing babies illegally, because it needs to be safe. It needs to be safe. Well, listen, women are still dying by abortions. Evidence right here, Keisha Marie Atkins. And by the way, just personally, I have a little history with Albuquerque. So does Troy Newman, who's going to be with me in a minute. In 2013, Troy and I and others helped to put on the ballot there, along with Bud and Tara Shaver there in Albuquerque, put a citizen's petition on the ballot in Albuquerque. First time it ever been done, to ban late-term abortion. So we went to Albuquerque, and we did what we normally do, and that is raise awareness about late-term abortion. And if you would, Mr. Producer, put up a picture. We handed out these postcards. We call them, go to the next photo. We call them Killers Among Us. Killers Among Us. And see, Curtis Boyd and the abortionists that kill babies at Southwest Women's Options, they're not doctors. They're butchers. You know, the other day I was reading something about how we in the pro-life movement need to not call them abortionists because that might be offensive. I'm sorry. I mean, please. And we're worried about what we call abortionists. These are baby killers. I mean, come on. They're killers among us. They are monsters in our midst. You could be checking out at Walmart and this dude could be standing next to you and wouldn't even know it. They're killers among us and they need to be exposed. So we handed out these postcards in Albuquerque to raise awareness about the abortion killing that was happening at Southwest Women's Options. We did that in 2013. And then the day of the election, the actual, when people went to the polls, I got arrested. Long story. I won't tell you about it, but I ended up spending time in jail there in the fine city of Albuquerque. So we have a little bit of history here. And Troy was with us there in 2013, has been working with Abortion Free New Mexico for years to try to shut down this butcher shop, this late-term abortion mill, Southwest Women's Options. So what I want to do here, let's turn, if we could, to Troy Newman. Troy Newman, the director of Operation Rescue, who basically broke this news yesterday regarding the death of Keisha Marie Atkins here in New Mexico. Troy, thanks for being on the Mark Harrington Show.
Mark, you're a great friend, and I appreciate being on the show here with you today, especially to talk about just a tragedy. You mentioned that you have a daughter. I've got a daughter right about the same age, and the just unbelievable, unspeakable horror of finding out that your daughter died is one thing, but then to find out that she was butchered in such an inhumane manner by these disgusting individuals. I can't think of anybody more disgusting than kills women and children. Who in the world could be more horrible, more tragic, more despicable or despised than someone that kills women and children?
Right. I mean, women and children first is the motto, right? We're supposed to be defending them, not killing them. So
that's
if you would, Troy.
Abortionists are killing women and children first.
Exactly. So let's talk about this situation in New Mexico, if you would, Troy. Mm-hmm. You guys, along with Abortion Free New Mexico there, Bud and Tara Shaver and their organization, Father Embarado and others, Priests for Life, have been working to shut this place down for a long time. Give us a story. How this happened, what was it, February 4th? Was the actual day of the death of this young lady, Keisha Marie Atkins. Give us the backstory and how you guys found out about all this.
Well, this is one of the key ingredients to our strategy in ending abortion in America. We wrote a whole book on it called Abortion Free. And that's why the group in Albuquerque is called Abortion Free New Mexico. We're starting these satellite organizations in different communities to make our communities abortion free. And so one of the strategies that we use is we let people know that we are available and are interested in receiving anonymous tips. We work with informants all across the abortion industry. And I'll tell you, I have talked to some very interesting individuals embedded deep inside the abortion cartel. Well, Bud and Tara, Abortion Free New Mexico, received an anonymous tip that a woman had passed away at this abortion mill back in February. So we jumped into high gear and did a Freedom of Information Act request for the woman's name, and we received, or Bud and Tara received, the autopsy report, which detailed, albeit a little bit whitewashed, but detailed the horrific evidence and cold, hard facts that this woman came in. Mark, you said it, she was 6 months pregnant. Let that sink in for just a minute. 6 months pregnant, 24 weeks. This babies, in fact, I have a good friend of mine who has a baby. This child is now 5 years old, who was born at 24 weeks, was in the NICU unit, the intensive care unit for children, little babies, neonatal babies, was in there for 3 or 4 weeks before he was released. But he's a perfectly beautiful, rambunctious little 5-year-old, comes out to the farm and rides horses with us. This baby could have lived easily outside the womb. She was swollen. She was big. She went in for a 4-day procedure. We'll use that parenthetically. 4 days it takes to kill this baby. And what they use there is the George Tiller method, the induction method, where the baby is injected with digoxin. A needle goes through the woman's abdomen. They find the baby's heart using a sonogram machine. You know, pro-life centers use sonogram machines to present life to the moms. Abortion clinics use sonogram machines to kill the baby.
Right,
so
to
they
guide
injected
the
the baby.
abortion doctor.
Yep. I've said it oftentimes, I'll say it again, that abortion mills have sonogram machines for the same reason that butchers have scales. They sell abortion by the pound. And the bigger the baby, the more expensive it is. So the baby's dead. Go ahead,
Troy. I want to play that. I want to play a clip, if you would, and then you can comment on this. There's a clip that Bud and Tara uncovered of a conversation between a client, so-called client, and one of the abortion administrators there at Southwest Women's Options. And folks, prepare yourself here. It's some hard listening. If you would, Mr. Producer, bring up the audio or video of the clip where the administrator's talking about euthanizing the baby and discussing the process of how to kill a late-term baby. That's not the right one. There you go. Go ahead and play that if you would.
Now, if you were able to get here for next week to start on Tuesday on the 13th, I would want to prepare you for a fee of $8,500.
Boom.
Okay.
Let me give you a little more information about what this process is. When I talk about that it's a 3 to 4 day process, this is a process here in our clinic of labor and delivery. So you actually would be delivering what would be a stillborn here in our office, okay, with where you are in pregnancy. What our doctor would do on the first day on Tuesday is she will use a medication that will euthanize the fetus.
That's the job.
So it will stop the fetal heart on that first day.
Injecting the digoxin.
Will I go into labor?
You will go into labor. Well, labor is going to be induced here in the clinic, usually 1 to 2 days later. The doctor will use a substance which is called laminaria. She'll place that in the cervix, stays in the cervix overnight, and will very gradually begin to open up and dilate your cervix overnight. So you'll probably have cramping and discomfort overnight while the cervix is dilating. We do want you to stay close by, within a very short drive. So if your body does go into labor, and that can happen, if the cervix, dilates and your body may go into labor, then you call us. That's what you do. So you'll return Wednesday
so go ahead
morning.
and we can end it there, Mr. Producer. I mean, folks, you know what? Even now, after 20 years of fighting baby killing, it's hard for me to even listen to that stuff. Believe that there are actually people taking that phone call to know exactly what they're doing. We're killing babies that can live outside the womb. We talk about it in these cold, clinical manner. It's unbelievable. But having said that, this process, this 4-day process, this is the process that apparently Keisha Marie Atkins underwent during her late-term abortion, which ended up killing her and her baby. Troy, if you would, you were talking about the process. If you would kind of disclose what happened in this situation with Keisha and what supposedly went wrong, I guess, in this case, because she died too.
Right. So you heard the saleswoman, the abortion salesperson, selling this abortion, $8,500.
$8,500. Think of that. $8,500. I mean, if you didn't believe abortion was profitable before, I mean, do you need to hear anything more than that? It's unbelievable.
So she says they're going to give some medication. That's the digoxin. and
Right.
a needle is placed through Keisha's abdomen into the baby's heart, injecting the baby. The baby goes into cardiac arrest, is dead. And over the next 4 days, they insert the laminaria into the woman's cervix. Like she said, it's a little piece of seaweed, and it goes right into the cervix, and it slowly expands the cervix to the point where you can deliver a 6-month-old stillborn baby. Now, here's what went wrong. And we know this from the autopsy report, and we also know this because we've looked at several discrepancy reports from this abortion clinic and others around the country. We know they're unsanitary. In fact, one of the things that came out of my involvement with Center for Medical Progress was that many people inside the abortion industry say that the abortion clinics are just thriving bacteria centers. Not only is there sexually transmitted diseases that are passed from one woman to the next from unsterilized equipment, but the bacteria there is insane. And they oftentimes introduce infections into women's bodies. So we don't know whether or not this needle was being reused, the digoxin needle, or maybe like several other abortionists, they feel like they don't have to have the right to wash their hands. We found that out in the Kansas City Planned Parenthood discrepancy reports. These abortionists don't wash their hands. So they introduced bacteria into what was once a sterile environment, Keisha's uterus and cervix. And an infection began, a terrible, raging infection, similar to DIC, disseminated intravascular coagulation, which is a big term that says all the clotting entities that are inside your blood are used up. So your blood can no longer clot this infection or this injury. So she's bleeding from every orifice of her body. She had bleeding on her brain. She had bleeding and infection in her uterus, and a blood clot broke loose, went through her arteries and into her lungs, and she had a pulmonary embolism. That's what the autopsy said was the cause of her death. But when you read further, you read deep into the autopsy, she had a raging infection. She was hemorrhaging from her uterus. She was suffering greatly. In fact, they didn't even get a chance to finish the abortion. They sent her to the University of New Mexico, where she eventually died. She had fractures in her rib cage because they were compressing her so much and trying to resuscitate her. She had multiple volumes of blood replacement, either white blood cells or whole blood. It doesn't say exactly. But you can just imagine the trauma and the pain that this poor woman went through. She was told, she walks in, here's the deal. You walk into an abortion clinic, perfectly healthy young woman, designed by God to deliver this baby. The baby's healthy, she's healthy, and she's carted out and dead within just a few hours. This is directly attributable to the disgusting, despicable habits of the abortion cartel.
My guest is Troy Newman with Operation Rescue. We're talking about Keisha Marie Atkins, who was killed by Curtis Boyd at the Southwest Women's Options in Albuquerque, New Mexico, the largest late-term abortion mill in America, for that matter, probably the world. Troy, if you could, let's talk about the connection between the University of New Mexico and this abortion mill, because as you mentioned also in the autopsy report, they're not entirely forthcoming. They say that she was killed preparing for labor. They did mention cardiac arrest, did mention the abortion, but there is a nefarious connection, is there not, between the University of New Mexico and this late-term abortion facility?
They're both under criminal investigation by the Attorney General of the state of New Mexico. And that started from the congressional inquiry. I believe it was called I'm having a brain freeze here.
Something on infant lives.
The congressional inquiry on infant lives. Yeah, something like that. But they spent all of 2016 investigating the abortion industry, particularly Planned Parenthood and the sale of baby body parts. And one thing they came up with is there's a connection between the University of New Mexico and Southwind Women's Options, where they're purchasing, there's a transfer, an illegal transfer of fetal remains, just like we exposed with the Center for Medical Progress.
Right.
And they're experimenting on these babies. And so each one, I believe, they're watching each other's back. And so when they sent Miss Atkins' body over to the University of New Mexico, it's easy to see why, or the motive for kind of doing the best they could to cover up the abortion aspect of this and how she died. But it's clear, again, she walked into this abortion clinic perfectly healthy and came out on a stretcher and after a 4-day procedure. Clearly, the introduction of the laminaria, the bacteria, the infection, and the hemorrhaging was all caused at the hands of this abortion facility.
Right. My guess again, Troy Newman with Operation Rescue. The autopsy says sepsis, which of course is an infection of the blood clots in the lungs, and a cardiac arrest. All done at the hands of Curtis Boyd. Curtis Boyd, what a great man. Curtis Boyd, let's, Mr. Producer, if you could cue up the video of Curtis Boyd being straight up and open about what he does. Curtis Boyd not hiding a thing, folks. I mean, this man is unapologetic about what he does at Southwest Women's Options. He kills babies that are 24 weeks and above, and he's proud of it. Let's go ahead and play this clip.
Am I killing? Yes, I am. I know that.
It's a jarring admission from anyone, especially from a doctor, and perhaps even more so from this doctor.
I'm an
Stop
ordained
right
Baptist
there.
minister.
Go ahead and reverse that. We got to hear that again. This stuff is, I mean, it's interesting that, you know, this little frog in the kettle thing, you know, over 25, 30, 40 years of abortion, we've kind of gotten immune to this type of thing. Here's a guy, think about it. He's coming on local TV and he just comes out and says, I'm killing babies. Go ahead and play it again.
Doctor's story.
Am I killing? Yes, I am. I know that.
It's a jarring
Like,
admission.
oh, yeah, no big deal. I'm killing babies. No big deal. That's cool. I'm good. You good? We're good. And it's right down here in your own city, this building right here. And we do it here. And it's legal and everything's kosher. Move on. Nothing to see. Go ahead. Move on. Go ahead and play the rest of the clip.
From anyone, especially from a doctor, and perhaps even more so from this doctor.
I'm an
By the way,
ordained
stop
Baptist
it.
minister.
Stop. He's not a doctor. Doctors heal. They don't kill. Stop calling them doctors. Go ahead.
He's now a Unitarian who says he prays often. Maybe not as
Oh,
often
there we
as
go.
members of...
You got to throw religion in there. He's a Unitarian and he prays often. Oh, boy. You know, he claims to be a Christian. Of course he does. Go ahead.
the Catholic Pro-Life Committee, who gather outside his office hoping to stop his work. And certainly, his prayers are different.
And I'll ask that the spirit of this pregnancy be returned to God with love and with understanding.
Curtis
my
Boyd
gosh. I mean,
is
stop
an
it there. I'm about
abortion-
ready to throw up. Where's the barf bag? It's hard to fathom. This guy says, oh, I pray that they'll be returned to God after I butchered them. Oh, I'm just going to return them to God. I mean, Troy, how in the world does this place stay open?
This guy is sick. This guy is sick beyond belief. And I'll tell you how they stay open. It's because, Curtis Boyd operates a pretty significant abortion mill in Dallas, Texas. But he moved to New Mexico, where there's no rules whatsoever. Texas is rather conservative. Kansas, we've made laws here. Most states have laws restricting. You're in Ohio, you have some pretty decent laws, obviously not perfect. But in New Mexico, there's no laws. Think about that. None whatsoever. There's not one single law protecting. You don't have a 24-hour waiting period. You don't have a sonogram law. You don't have a gestational limit. You don't have a ban on partial birth abortion. Nothing. It's the wild, wild west. And what's worse, if you're a New Mexico resident, your abortion's paid for by the taxpayers. He's there strictly for the money. Am I killing, he says? Absolutely. He calls himself a Baptist minister, now a Unitarian. It's laughable. He is a murderer for hire. He's a hired gun, an assassin.
Absolutely. So let's wrap this up. Troy, I appreciate you being on the program today. Keisha Marie Atkins, 23 years old, 6 months pregnant, dies at Southwest Women's Options on February 4th, 2017. The autopsy reveals she died because of the abortion, although they're trying to cover that up a little bit, talking about the pregnancy, possible sepsis, cardiac arrest, and blood clots. What are you and Abortion Free New Mexico going to do about this? And what can our listeners, our viewers do to help out?
Number one, I think that they should continue to flood the Attorney General's office with calls.
Okay.
This place is under criminal investigation and has been for over a year. Let's get off their, how should we say it, rear ends and get and prosecute these people. There's ample evidence that they're breaking the law on its face. Number two, let's go after them for criminal negligence in the death of this poor young lady. We're also working with some of the entities. I won't say who, but I think a big fat lawsuit needs to be filed here, and then discovery. Money cannot replace this poor girl's life, but it can certainly punish an entity like Southwest Women's Options. So those are some of the things that we're doing. Of course, pray. Number one, pray. Pray in faith. We know that God wants to answer the prayers that we ask, that abortion clinics close, that babies get saved, that abortionists turn to Jesus. God wants all of these things. And when we align our will with God, God answers those prayers. So pray and then act.
Folks, if you want to find out more about this case and the great work of Operation Rescue, go to operationrescue.org. Troy Newman is the national director. And folks, believe me, they are doing the best undercover work of anybody in this country to shut down these abortion mills. And one by one, they're shutting them down, and that they're making entire cities and hopefully states soon abortion free, because we're going to prosecute the abortionists for breaking the law. As Father Frank Pavone has said famously, you can't practice vice virtuously. Folks that kill babies are also going to break the law in a number of ways. And when you catch them doing that, you can shut them down. And that's the work of Operation Rescue. Go to operationrescue.org and let's bury the Attorney General there in New Mexico with phone calls calling for the investigation of Southwest Women's Options and the investigation of this murder, I will say, at the hands of Curtis Boyd, of this young woman, Keisha Marie Atkins. So, folks, if you would, go to operationrescue.org and find out more. Troy Newman, thank you for being on the program. Let me wrap things up. We got a couple things happening in the next couple of weeks I want you to know about. If you would, Mr. Producer, bring up the event screen. Got a couple things happening here in the state of Ohio. Some big things are going down, folks. A lot of this has to do with the work of Operation Rescue, by the way. The first thing is on August 30th in Toledo, there's going to be a hearing in the Toledo City Council about the so-called proposed buffer zone that they're trying to erect around this last remaining abortion mill in the city of Toledo. We're going to be there. I exhort my viewers and listeners, if you live in the Toledo area, to come out. It'll be 3 p.m. at the Government Center in downtown Toledo, August 30th, for a public hearing on the so-called buffer zone, the proposed safe zone, if you will, the censorship zone, I should say, regarding this last remaining abortion clinic in Toledo. And also on September 12th, this is big stuff as well, and this has to do with the work of Operation Rescue and others, and that is enforcing current Ohio law. The Ohio Supreme Court is going to hear the case of Toledo, the last remaining abortion clinic, against the Ohio Department of Health, who's requiring that they, along with all the rest of the ambulatory surgical centers in Ohio, abide by the transfer agreements. That is an agreement with local hospitals to transfer patients if necessary. Toledo's abortion clinic, that is Capital Care there in Toledo, has been unable, to find anybody, a hospital, to sign on to that transfer agreement. There's good reason for that. Nobody wants to touch abortion, and hospitals are one of them. Now, the fact of the matter is, if anybody is affected by an abortion, they can go to a hospital. It's not like the women aren't going to get care. They are, but it's required by law in the state of Ohio that you have a transfer agreement. And the Ohio Department of Health is saying that this Toledo abortion mill needs to close down unless they can find a local hospital within 30 miles of the abortion mill to sign on to the transfer agreement. And right at this point, nobody's been willing to step up, thank God. And it doesn't look like they are. So the Ohio Supreme Court's going to hear this case. We'll be there, and we'll be reporting to you more about that after September 12. And I'm sure there'll be a long legal battle probably after that as well. So those are the events coming up. Folks, be listening and watching on Facebook, 1 p.m. Eastern Time, here on Facebook and other social media platforms for the Mark Harrington Show, streaming live. And we'll be coming to you with the current events of the day as related to the abortion issue. Mostly that's the things we cover here. And I have guests like Troy Newman from Operation Rescue and others. Pray for Operation Rescue. Pray for Troy, his ongoing case with the several situations where he's being sued because of the work of the Center for Medical Progress, exposing Planned Parenthood, those court cases working themselves through the legal system. Continue to pray for rescue. Pray for Troy Newman and the success of Operation Rescue to bring light to what's going on in America with this kind of a situation where a young lady, Keisha Marie Atkins, was killed at the hands of an late-term abortionist, Curtis Boyd, in Albuquerque. These women cannot be forgotten. These women need justice. The family needs justice. And folks, so go to operationrescue.org, contact the Attorney General and call for an investigation of this young woman's death. And I will keep you informed as we find out more in the coming days and weeks about this situation in Albuquerque. Also pray for Bud and Tara Shaver, and Abortion Free New Mexico is fighting the good fight there to close down the late-term abortion center there in Albuquerque. So we'll see you next time. God bless you. God bless America. And remember, America, to bless God.
You've been listening to Mark Harrington, your radio activist. For more information on how to become a witness against the evil plague in America, call Created Equal at 614-269-7808, 614-269-7808, or go online to createdequal.net, createdequal.net. Be sure to tune to The Mark Harrington Show next time for your marching orders in the culture war.